Hey everyone, my name is Rahat. I hope you all are doing well. I am the host of the video series Mainframe Voices. As the name suggests, we are creating a video series where we gather different perspectives of experts on mainframe technology and mainframe modernization. Our goal is to highlight the importance and future of mainframe in today's technology landscape. In this episode of Mainframe Voices, we ask the experts about their early days with mainframe to their current impact. Let's explore their journeys and gain valuable insights into the mainframe ecosystem.
I am the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Business Development at Phoenix Software International. We develop and market mainframe tools, obviously. I started off, however, in the distributed world as a developer. I spent a good portion of career in the financial industry in Chicago doing hands-on development. I was in the latter part of my career, the Director of Trading Technology at a buy-side financial investment management firm. So my team was responsible for everything from the point of order entry through settlement. And we did all of the development, all of the support, all of the integration, all of that stuff. It's been about 10 years ago. I decided that it was time for a change. I didn't want to get up at 2 a.m. Because my phone was ringing and I had angry traders calling me in the middle of the night, screaming that their orders weren't going through, and you'd have to wake up and find your key fob and log into your computer and call someone in Japan and try and figure out what was going on. And I decided I had enough of that. I wanted to do something different. I, through a friend, fell into a position, literally, as the executive director of Share. And I say I fell into it because I got this phone call, someone telling me that I think you're perfect for this position. I think your skill set will cross over. And he's describing to me this whole world of nonprofit organization management, which I had no idea existed. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not really sure. So he sent me a bunch of stuff, and I spent a weekend doing a lot of research. And then I spent about 2.5 hours with him on the phone on Monday morning, asking him a lot of questions. And then I said, I think maybe I can do this. And so the rest is history. I became the executive director for Share. I knew next to nothing about mainframes. Unfortunately, for me, it was not something that I had ever focused on, I'd ever paid attention to. But it turns out I was this close to it for the majority of my career, because in the financial industry, on the sell side of the street, where the banks, your broker dealers, those folks are, they all have mainframes. I was on the buy side of the street where we didn't have mainframes, but I was dealing all day long with the sell side of the street, with getting our orders through, getting them settled, and so forth. So when I came on to Share, I started to realize the synergy between the two, right? I started to realize that my technical skill set and my understanding wasn't that far off. It was not close, but it was enough. I wasn't completely in the dark. And then I started looking at all the different organizations that were members of Share, and I was like, wow, I know these people. I know these people. I've been working with these people for a decade. Like, I can't believe I was this close and I never knew. Once I got involved in the Share community and the Share organization, and I'm going to say the community specifically, that community embraced me the instant I walked in the door. And I mean, sometimes literally embraced me. They took me under their wing. They still have me under their wing. They teach me something new every day. I am very fortunate to be surrounded by all of these brilliant people that make up the mainframe community, and I learn from them on a daily basis, and it just brings more and more passion to what I do all day long, because I get fortunate enough to be able to work with all these people.
My current role is twofold. First, I'm a TSC chair for Zoe project, which is one of the successful projects within the open mainframe. Second, I'm working as the product owner within the Broadcom, where I'm responsible for part of the Zoe that's known as API mediation layer. Basically simplifies exposure of REST APIs from the mainframe, making it easier to integrate it as the system of record for hybrid environment. I've been involved in open source for many years. Before that, I've been working on some open source projects with European Space Agency and NASA. And I really enjoy security and open source in general. I wasn't really drawn to this field. It kind of happened by accident. But after spending some time with it, I found many interesting things around mainframe. First, how much it actually resembles the cloud environments. Lots of the behaviors and technologies and things like accounting and stuff is very similar between mainframe and cloud. And second, it's great to work with people who has 30, 40 years of experience in a field, which like cloud is not with us for 30, 40 years. So you won't get people with this type and level of experience there.
I'm a mainframer for 15 years. Started my career in the Philippines where I'm a COBOL developer around that time. I work as a COBOL developer for around maybe 10, 11 years. And then I switched to a support engineer, system engineer, basically when I moved to Czech Republic in IBM. And then after that, I joined Broadcom and moved to Prague, where I became an open source engineer. And that's how my journey started with modernization. And, I was exposed in a lot of modern tooling, and I was working with Zoe. I became an ambassador, I became a Zoe Explorer lead, which is a really great experience for me. And today, I joined Dynatrace as part of their mainframe support and also a tech evangelist because I do like how modernization in mainframe is like moving in a lot of aspects, in a lot of parts as an engineer. So it's not just about, because when I was in Broadcom, it was more of a developer experience. How are you going to develop your COBOL programs using VS Code? How are you going to use automation? And now what I'm doing is more on a monitoring perspective. Like how are you going to monitor your mainframe system and your environment on how your users are accessing your real-time data through Kix and IMS through Dynatrace, and it's in a modern approach. And I really, really love how it's done, and I'm exploring and learning a lot of things. To be honest, I don't know anything about mainframe when I started. So I joined this programmer trainee when I was in the Philippines, and it was like an internship, but it was like I think unpaid internship for like 6 months, and then if you pass and then they're gonna hire you or like go through like some process. So I thought, hey, that's a great way to start your job because you don't feel like you're so pressured to do a programming job, but you're like going on an internship and then you're learning, and they allowed us to choose two paths. So the first one would be mainframe, which is COBOL, and the second one would be Visual Basic. So around that time, Visual Basic is like a really big thing. And I thought like I was interested in COBOL because it's so simple, so easy, and it was like you don't have to think about anything because there's no like complex functions compared to Java and everything. It's like if you want to evaluate, use the word evaluate. If you want to print, use the word print. Whatever it is that you want to do, use the English words, it's gonna do it. And it's very straightforward, but at the same time, COBOL is super complex because you think differently in comparison to what I learned in school. In when you approach COBOL, it's very straightforward that somehow you need to be creative in thinking on how to get the data that you want because you need to. It's straightforward but at the same time complex, and that drew me through it. It challenged me so much that I wanted to understand it, and at the same time, it looks very antique, and that I feel like I'm playing with an old game. Like the terminal looks so old that it's interesting for me. I feel like I'm so cool because nobody knows what I'm doing, nobody understands it, but at the same time, I'm the only one who knows it. But
Yeah, so my name's Joe Winchester, and I work for IBM. International Business Machines. That's my sort of corporate employer. I've been there for quite a while, actually. I joined when my first son was just been born, so I guess he's 26 now, so it must be 26 years, 27-year career. But I haven't always had the same job. I've always enjoyed working around open source. I've dealt with lots of open source technologies and projects over my career at IBM. And you mentioned Open Mainframe Project Ambassador there. That's a role I'm very proud of. I work a lot with a project called Zoe, and that's very much around helping customers, for a number of reasons, modernize and transform their kind of mainframe landscapes. It was sort of by accident, actually. So even though I'm English, I'm British, and I live and work in England. When I joined IBM, I was living in the US at the time, the USA, United States. And I ended up joining IBM having nothing to do with mainframes. At the time that I joined, I was working in sort of tooling, software tooling, a software language called Smalltalk. I ended up drifting over towards Java very early on in Java's story. Java is an open source language. I was one of the first open source languages, and I ended up being part of the team that created an IDE, an integrated development environment called Eclipse, an open source framework. Very, very successful. Both Java and Eclipse are still successful today. And then I ended up moving back to England. And for the first 2 years, I was still working in Eclipse, but I'm based in a place called Hursley, and it's a big mainframe development lab, not for hardware. That's developed in the USA in a place called Poughkeepsie. Lots of things like Kix or CICS, MQ, more recently ZOS Connect, they're all developed here. So it's a real mainframe. And what I would do was everybody else I worked with in the world wasn't next door to me. And I remember seeing people I was going to coffee and lunch with people, and they were all working on Kix. I started a little skunk work project with a colleague of mine, and we thought at the time, the way that you connected with Kix was very much a green screen. That's, text-based interface, the kind of thing you see in movies when people are trying to hack into systems and stuff. There was no graphical user interface for it, or there was no Eclipse space. And we just decided, let's fool around and create one, and we did. I ended up doing mainframe just because of my physical location, and I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed going back to customers and showing them a more modern, intuitive way to get things done, and a more integrated way. And that's what I've been doing for about the last 12 years. Yeah.
I am CEO of a company called Interskill Learning. We're the biggest mainframe training provider in the world. We deliver over 1 million hours of mainframe training globally every year. We work very closely with IBM and the Digital Badge program, so much so that over 80% of all IBM badges issued for mainframe training globally are for Interskill courseware. We even work with the Open Mainframe project, offering up a digital credential for Zoe. So I am looking at things from that workforce perspective, from a skills perspective, from a training perspective. I'm based in the US. I'm an Aussie, if you can tell by the accent. So I'm from Australia originally, but I've been here in the US for almost 35 years. I was out of high school and I went through university and was a hydrographer. So I was a water resources scientist managing lakes and rivers and streams. So water resources in Australia, which is a very dry continent. And I went off to do a bit of traveling in Europe and went to Oktoberfest in Munich in 1989 and was sitting there having a drink at a table with all of these people. And everyone at the table were mainframe programmers, Kix and COBOL programmers from England and South Africa and America and all over. And they convinced me, by the time we'd had a few beers and a lot of conversation, they convinced me that computing, because the mainframe was the only computing back then, a career in computers was a very exciting thing. So when I finally got back to Australia, I put myself through a college that was teaching mainframe programming and mainframe operations systems, and was going to be a mainframe programmer, I'm assuming at one of the big banks or something in Australia, insurance companies, the usual. The college was experimenting with this brand new thing in 1990 called computer-based training. And this is before the internet. This was basically on a standalone PC. You could have courses on mainframe programming or operations that you would go through digitally instead of the traditional classroom type of training. And that really took off. I joined this group to develop this brand new product, this computer-based training for mainframe. And within 5 years, it was worldwide. We had offices in England and the US and Australia, and companies all over the world were using it. That was still pre-internet days. And then when the internet hit, boy, it became e-learning and it really took off. And, someone of your generation knows that e-learning, digitally delivered training, is just normal now. You must have been doing it since you were at school and through corporate careers and so forth. It's just a normal part of everyday life. But I'm excited to say I was there from the beginning when you would explain computer-based training to somebody and they'd look at you like you were showing them some weird monster that they'd never even considered before. It was a very weird thing to people thinking of doing training with computer-based training, but it's well used now. So anyway, that was sort of my launch into not a traditional mainframe career. 35 years in educating mainframers all over the world using this online training, and having that technology and the methodology sort of evolve over the 35 years to the amazing training that's available today online and the badging and all the rest of it. So it's been a fantastic ride.
My broad role is a product manager in IBM mainframe software. So I work in with the Kix team as part of the product management team there. I also work on some integration products for IBM Z, so in and around the ZOS Connect and Kix Transaction Gateway space. And I'm also the chairperson for Galassa. So a bit of a mix of roles. I wear different hats depending on which situation I'm in, but generally really passionate for mainframe modernization. I've been around mainframe for around 2 years, so I came originally from more of the consulting and software background, but I absolutely love the mainframe. It's a great community. And IBM Hursley, the lab, has all sorts of different teams. We have MQ that's developed in Hursley and Kix. So I knew about the mainframe because on my consulting projects, I'd worked in Hursley. I knew the teams existed, but I didn't know much about the mainframe. And for me, I was doing a business degree with IBM at the time, and I wanted to learn more about business. It wasn't necessarily the technology that brought me to the platform. It was more the skills that I could learn through product management and business that drew me. As I've learned more about the platform, I've become a lot more of an advocate. I think the longevity and the persistence and the determination of the group in mainframe to keep it going inside and outside of IBM has been a real breath of fresh air. You don't get that necessarily in other parts of the industry that I've worked in. So it's a real community and a real group of people that feel passionately about something, which I think is really important.
A lead product developer for BMC software. That means I'm involved in coding for our products for the mainframe platform, also bug fixing, sorting out customer issues. I do presentations around Europe on our products and on DB2 because DB2 is my specialism. And I've always been a fan of Linux and open source. As soon as IBM adopted Linux on the mainframe, I think that was probably 2001. I might be wrong, give or take. I've showed an interest in it, and particularly open source software which helps the DevOps and development for customers, help them to develop their own software stack for their businesses. My involvement is to help automate things like database changes in their open source deployment and scheduling, stuff like Jenkins and whatnot. It all starts a long time ago. I was studying computer science in university. The third year of our four-year course, was an industrial placement. We had a large steelworks literally at the bottom of the valley that I was living in when I was growing up. And they came along and interviewed me. I ended up working for them as a COBOL programmer for a year. And I was plucked from a Unix environment and thrown into a mainframe environment. And it was completely alien to me. Took me a while to get used to it. But after a year, they were happy with my progress and they said, okay, finish your year in university next year. And then when you graduate, we'll offer you a job. So when I graduated, I went straight back, started working for Steelworks as a COBOL programmer. Being a developer at heart, I'm inherently lazy. And if there's anything I can do to automate processes and make my life easier and the life of others easier, I started to knock things together just to make development easier. And one of the system programmers, the IBM system programmers in the data center in another steelworks in Port Talbot, just about 40 miles away from where I lived, he became aware of what I was doing. And he said, you come and work for me where I can keep my eye on you. And that's where I got involved deeper in the mainframe, started to work on DB2. The rest is history. I left there after 6 years, became a DB2 consultant, and then I traveled the UK a bit. And then after that, I settled down and became a DBA for 20 years for a large UK bank. Then the work I was doing in automating processes, and basically we were doing Agile and DevOps before those terms were invented. And I attracted the attention of BMC, and they came along and offered me a job to do some automation coding for them.
Rituraj Mahato, a final year computer science undergrad from India, who is passionate about mainframe technology. When I joined my university for the very first time, in the first semester itself, I was searching for opportunities. So opportunities to learn together, to collaborate and meet new people around the globe. So I applied to different programs, some from IBM, some from some other company as well. But I was rejected in a lot of them because initially we didn't have that experience when we just transitioned from school to college. So I was not a good speaker. I was not a good person in terms of technology. I didn't knew a lot about the AI, machine learning, the cloud computing things. So how to get started? That was the biggest question. So I was looking for some opportunities online. So they were open source, but I was not that inspired to pursue a career in open source. Right, rather I was thinking to just go for something which is much more career oriented. It's not just job which you do, but something which is having a long lasting career and impact in the community. So that's how I found this ambassador program. I applied and got selected, and from there we used to attend the events hosted by the Hobby Gear and IBMers together. We used to do different meetups and all, and that's how it started. Initially it was just an online thing, and later we got offline opportunities as well, to be in that place where IBMers and the clients together talking about mainframes.
I have my own consulting company these days called Mullins Consulting Inc. And my focus is on all things data, with a primary focus on DB2 for ZOS. A little bit of background on me. I've been working with the mainframe for 4 decades now. Started back in the mid 80s. When I was still in college, I got an internship at US Steel. And when I went there, at that time, US Steel had a complete education program that every new person who came into the company went through. And, that was invaluable, because when I was in college, I went to the University of Pittsburgh. We were using DEC machines back then, Digital Equipment Corporation. Now they're not around anymore, and the primary language they were teaching then was Pascal. So it was a completely different environment than what the real workplace was like. So it was invaluable to get that internship at US Steel and really learn and get indoctrinated into the mainframe way of doing things. And from there, I worked for several other companies in the Pittsburgh area, Mellon Bank, Duquesne Light. Moved on and worked for software companies. I worked for Platinum Technology, which got acquired by CA, which then got acquired by Broadcom. Worked for BMC Software and some other small software vendors. Was also an analyst at Gartner Group for a while, covering databases and database administration. Probably about 15 or so years ago, took the opportunity to hang out my own shingle, and I've been an independent consultant ever since. Still working with the mainframe, still loving it.
I'm Sarah Kriesch, and I'm working as a consultant at Accenture for different customers in the mainframe area, from banking until automotive, closed everywhere, also in combination with cloud technologies. And in my free time, I am contributing to open source technologies, especially to Linux. I am in the OpenSUSE community since around 12 years now. I started in the documentation and translation area, grew up in the development area during my studies in computer science, and when I became the release engineer for S390X after my bachelor thesis at IBM, and now I'm leading the Linux distribution working group together with Elizabeth, another mentor of the Open Mainframe Project Mentorship Program together. Firstly, I learned Linux system administration, so I grew into the mainframe area with a Linux and DevOps background, and during my bachelor studies, we were invited to the Academic Mainframe Consortium for a conference Linux and containerization was included there also. Therefore, that was really interesting for me, that you can see another hardware type where you can run Linux on it. And that was so interesting for me that I wanted to learn more about that, and therefore I wanted to write my bachelor thesis at IBM about it.
My background is actually technology consulting and strategy, and I've worked for many years in looking at client challenges, defining solutions, implementing modernization and transformation on large, complex multi-year programs. And not that long ago, I ended up joining Red Hat on a more of a technology strategy perspective, with spending a lot of my time on the application modernization topic and mainframe application modernization. And at Red Hat, which is a company that built their success on top of open source, at Red Hat, we really believe in kind of continuous innovation and embracing open principles. And that also led me to kind of become more active in the Open Mainframe project, basically embracing corporate culture and principles of open. I've been spending a lot of my time working with clients, working with partners, working with communities, discussing ways and options to drive modernization. I think it's a bit of circumstances, but also curiosity. So circumstances because before my current role, which is a bit more of a thought leadership and vision, I've spent many years on consulting, tech consulting, and that was very much about understanding the problem, coming up with potential options to solve them, actually delivering what I've said it would be possible to do, and actually getting the job done. A lot of the tech consulting work and tech strategy was really moving from an existing state to the target state, and that always encompassed modernizing some application. But sometimes modernizing doesn't mean replace. Sometimes is adjusting it a bit, sometimes is buying new solutions, sometimes is integrating other things to achieve something that is more modern. So there's very different ways to look at modernization. Modernization is really about where you are and where you want to be and the path to get there. It's not necessarily straightforward saying get rid of all this old stuff, it's not great, and buy new stuff, shiny stuff. So because I've been involved in that throughout as part of my consulting role, I then, when I moved into Red Hat, ended up dedicating, because of my experience, but also because of my interest around the topic, ended up dedicating part of my time to kind of define what modernization should look like, specifically for mainframes, because it's still an important area for Red Hat customers, and specifically financial services customers, which is where I spend most of my time.
Currently, I have the opportunity to drive direction for the IBM internal CIO organization to support the platforms that we run. So all of our internal systems, imagine, payroll and accounting and ledger and all of the things that run a company, and in our case, a very large international company. And so driving the direction for those platforms, which includes the OpenShift environments, cloud environments, on-prem, etc. And so it's a large hybrid cloud environment with AI. When I started with IBM 37 years ago, I started in ISPF development. And so I started on Z. It wasn't Z back then, but it became Z. And have always worked in and around Z while I've been with IBM, though I've done plenty of other environments. But a lot of my focus has been in and around Z because of its value and its importance to our clients.
Working with mainframe for the past 20 years, mostly I've been working on the application data side, consolidating data, sharing the data with enterprise teams, doing enterprise data governance work. Also, I have a doctorate in computer science with concentration in big data analytics. So I also part-time I teach machine learning programming, machine learning as well as programming for undergraduate students. In Kyndryl, I work as one of the senior architects and my main focus is on mainframe data democratization. Honest, my first project that when I joined a company was a mainframe project. And right from there, I got associated with mainframe projects one after another, and I've been working with it. It's surprisingly that most people don't anticipate this happening. I came out of college. I have been trained in COBOL, Java, and a bunch of other databases. But then the first project was in mainframe, DB2 and COBOL. Since then I've been growing in my career.
Absolutely. So I have been working at IBM since 2020, started in May 2020. And I originally started working at IBM as a level 4 software developer apprentice. So came into the company completely brand new with no kind of technical knowledge or experience. I'd never done any kind of software development or even any technical roles before. So I was really sort of learning from a blank slate and learning from scratch. About 6 months after I joined IBM and obviously started my apprenticeship scheme, I joined the Galassa team. So I've been with Galassa for about 3.5 years now. And also, obviously, that's where, the majority of, the vast majority of my career has been with Galassa and in open source. So I finished my first level 4 apprenticeship, and then I moved on to doing a degree apprenticeship after that, which I just finished last month. In terms of my kind of responsibilities in Galassa, obviously, again, I was very new coming into the team. I joined, with only 6 months in the job. But after about just under 2 years with the team, I moved into sort of leading the infrastructure and being responsible for Galassa's build processes, release processes, stuff like that, which I've continued to do for the last couple of years. So as I say, very responsible for mostly infrastructure related DevOps type stuff in Galassa, and also feature development as well. So is that I didn't know that was what I would be coming into when I was hired. Being an apprentice, you apply to work at IBM as a software developer apprentice, but it's, you then get allocated to somewhere in the company. So, it wasn't something that I chose, but I think it's been a really good place to start my career. Even as you say, it's got this impression of being quite legacy, and, some people may not think it's not cutting edge, or it's not the most relevant, or whatever it is that people think. I think actually working in a technology that's so stable and reliable and potentially isn't just like a new trend in technology, and it's not just some new buzzword, has actually been really good. I think working on something that is important and has been important for a long time, instead of maybe going for something a bit more cutting edge that might not actually be around in a few years' time or might not be as relevant. So as I say, didn't choose to come into this industry, but I'm glad it obviously worked out that way.
So I joined IBM about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I had been working on distributed systems. So my work was mostly on Linux systems, on x86. And my last company I was at, I was working on containerization solutions. And so when that role kind of wrapped up, I was looking for something very different. A lot of my friends were going to work in more Kubernetes work and other things. And I'm like, I've kind of followed the pack for a long time, but I want to do something different. I'm kind of interested in hardware. I'm interested in other architectures, and how open source plays a role in all of that. So when IBM approached me and said, hey, we've got this mainframe role, I was first like, I said I wanted something different, and I think this fits the bill. So after speaking with some of their technical staff, I was like, this is some really cool tech. I'm really excited about this, and I joined the company. So in my role at IBM, I work with open source communities to bring support for the platform into their projects. Fortunately for me, this is usually pretty easy. We have the build tools, we have the environments. It's really just a matter of open source projects enabling the builds for us. And then, sometimes there's porting issues, but honestly, it's not that much. So that's kind of my day-to-day work. I also go to open source conferences directly to speak with folks. And one of the things I do kind of as an aside to the open source work is I really geek out about the hardware, and I like bringing hardware pictures and hardware information to folks in the community, because I think, opening the doors to the mainframe is not something we do a lot, and actually showing the pictures of what it is and the really cool hardware and the really cool tech that goes into that, bringing that to the distributed communities that I've always worked with has been a lot of fun, and I think people have appreciated it.